So I remember being in, I think, year 3, and I don't know whether it was genuinely something that I had been asked to do or if I just went ahead and like did it. But I wrote this story, and I also really distinctly remember, you know, the computer paper that like back in the with like the dotted kind of
Yeah.
and like I distinctly remember writing this story on that kind of like old school computer paper, obviously like by hand. This little story about a girl who wants to save the rainforest.
Okay.
And and there's a part of like I could not for the life of you tell, like, for the life of me I can't tell you like what is in that story other than like it's about a girl who wants to and tries to save the rainforest. And like I grew up near the bush, so I understand, like I can kind of guess where that was coming from. And Fern Gully was a really important film in my life.
Yeah. Krista.
Yeah. But like I am from a family that is not terribly sentimental about like mementos, so like we never kept it, but I felt really proud of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like if I'm honest, that's the actual like first time that I really thought like I tell stories good.
In year 3.
Year 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of, you know, life happens and I stopped telling myself that I tell stories good for a while.
Yes, you lose the
that confidence, that innate kind of like
young person confidence.
Yeah.
Where you don't know you're not the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did eventually have like a little bit of like that dip in ego, which I probably needed.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the storytelling has always been really important to me. Like I love a good story, and I love being able to tell stories, and I have been known to get a little bit frustrated with people that don't let me tell a yarn the way that I want to. Like I'm building to drama and I'm building to
Okay.
And like there's sort of a running joke with some of my friends of like when they interrupt with questions, I'm like, you don't need that information yet.
Yeah.
Can you wait?
Yeah, right. Tell me about your narrative structure.
I do think that like I've probably got some internalized rules that I've never really thought too hard about. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And that's where that kind of like impulse to tell somebody like stop comes in.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've not really thought about what those rules are? They're instinctual rather than...
Largely. I mean, look, there's a big difference between when I'm telling a story for work and also what medium I'm in.
Okay.
So telling a story like just between friends and like, you know, that kind of stuff, that's where I have some like internalized rules that I can't, that's instinctual, and I know when I'm frustrated by someone disrupting them, but I don't know how to, other than to be like incredibly blunt, I don't know how to fix it. Or to tell myself to like calm down and it's not that deep.
Sure.
Which it isn't.
Yeah.
Whereas like I feel like when it comes to if it comes to like writing an article, I have a really set template, and it's a really structured, and I quite recently unpacked it for somebody, and I haven't necessarily been told to do to write in that way, but like I've learned that like my first 200 words needs to be like, it needs to be a scene, and it needs to have like a hook, like set some stakes, and I also need to have a quote from the person that this piece is about, like within 3 sentences. If I haven't had a quote from them, I've done something wrong, and I have to reevaluate like how I'm getting into that story, and have I done like how to do it quicker and how to bring them in more.
Why is that? What is doing it wrong about it?
Well, ultimately, because in a circumstance like that, I'm not the important person in that. Like, I want you to hear from them, and you should hear directly from them, like, rather than sort of ameliorated through me and through my like paraphrasing of their story. So I think maybe that's the actual difference, is like, is it my story or am I telling somebody else's? And that's where like I feel I've spent more time thinking about the like my internalized rules around telling someone else's story than I have about my internalized rules about telling my own.
Yep. So that's the introduction of a piece. What's next?
Well, so then after that, I've often thought about the between 2 and 4 kind of beats to a story. Like, so we've set the stakes. Now let me tell you about that thing. And again, that's kind of like there's a lot of kind of structure to that and similar rules that I apply around like how many quotes you should see, or like the level of like detail that you should hear coming from the person that this story is about, versus how much of it is in my voice, as like just kind of a narrated. I'm talking about a written piece, but you know.
Yeah.
And then so then depending on like, you know, how long is a piece of string, but in the next section, if I have a second person who's involved in this particular piece, that's the point at which I typically am bringing them in, and kind of introducing who is that person and why do we need their perspective too, and then sort of a similar treatment. But yeah, it's so much. I'm not a. It's so much easier to see when it's like actually I legitimately have a template that says like
yes,
this now.
Yeah, cool.
You know, subject heading, next section.
How do you go about preparing for those stories? Like, how do you choose who is the right person to talk to?
Normally so very often these are coming off the back of the radio interviews that I do. And so typically what has happened, unless I go into that interview knowing that there is, sometimes I go into an interview knowing that I'm going to do an audio version and a written version, and that really sets the tone for the kind of questions that I ask, because some things work really nicely in a written piece but don't necessarily work in audio, and vice versa.
Can you, like what?
So...
Like, what is something you would grab for audio versus what is something you would grab for the written piece?
Well, so recently not that long ago, I spoke to Megan Wilding about a play of hers, which was on in Melbourne. And there was a thing that I knew I wanted to do with her for the audio, which was she had played the Rainbow Serpent giving like economic advice or like cost of living hot takes on an ABC sort of comedy show.
Okay.
It was it's ridiculous and so funny. And she did this kind of lisp voice as the Rainbow Serpent, and no one really needs to sit through my attempt to write out somebody's lisp joke.
Yeah.
As like it's not a visual gag. It doesn't work as a visual gag. But in the interview, I asked her, you know, the cost of living crisis was worse, has gotten worse since January when she did this character. What would the Rainbow Serpent say to people to encourage them to buy a ticket to the theatre, which is like realistically an indulgence. And it was so much fun to have her just like drop into this silly character and this voice that she did. And yeah, like I said, it works really nicely in audio, but it
doesn't
painful as a written thing. There's also just like there are little details that you can get from, I guess, like to try and keep the two things similar but different, so that you actually learn something different if you've read the article versus if you've listened to the interview, because they both have different constraints as well.
And is that like your editorial coming in and your narration to the written piece, or is that from the subject?
It's a bit of both, because I try and, so in doing a radio show, I've got a lot of constraints around like duration, for instance. And I might have had the opportunity to talk to somebody for an hour, but I actually only have, it turns out that I can only dedicate like 35 minutes of the program to that interview. And that means that there's a lot of stuff that was discussed that just doesn't otherwise get to run. Yeah. And so I try and if I'm doing the two different things, then like some of that stuff that never went didn't go on air gets to be in the written piece.
Gets the light in the written piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find that the stuff that you are trimming from the audio piece has, like, is it stuff that you want to value and honor, and that's why it needs to have the written piece to go along with it?
Typically. I mean, there's also stuff that just falls flat. Like, and there's those awkward moments of, or like not awkward, but like there are those moments where someone has thinking time, or they have like, they want to rephrase something to get it just right.
For sure.
And that takes a little more time. So like sometimes when I'm cutting something down, it's
just air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you actually are getting sort of the very best version of that conversation. But yeah, so if I've gone into it knowing that I'm doing like, then I'm looking for those gorgeous moments that weren't able to run. I also, just to kind of come back, like sometimes I'm in the midst of an interview and I just think, actually, this is a really great yarn, and I do want to find a way to write about it as well, because it's totally different audiences.
Yeah.
Someone who reads something that, you can spend like, I'm going to ambitiously say 3 minutes, but like people don't necessarily stick with an article all the way through.
For sure.
But someone could spend 3 minutes of their morning reading something, and then and that's a much easier buy-in than sitting with a conversation that goes for, 35 minutes. So sometimes there is this moment where I'm just like, actually, this, like, I kind of, I'll hear them tell a story or like talk about an element of their work, and I'm just like, that like needs something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of politics to like what I'm able to write.
Okay.
Just because, like,
Can you unpack that?
just in that, working at the ABC, there's a lot of different departments, and they all have sort of I guess like first dibs on particular stories that are their beat, effectively. And without developing a relationship with those teams, it can be really challenging to get them to take on a new to them writer. So like, because you might not understand like I don't know, they maybe maybe the people that write about music only have a certain amount of real estate on the website for that week.
Yep.
And they have their own staff, and so obviously their staff need to be.
And I assume like they have their own separate audience as well. That they know this stuff will hit or it won't. And part of the departmental politics is audience politics.
Yeah, so it can also be that. So it can be things like, like that they're specifically prioritizing a certain type of story or a certain type of guest, and me barreling in with no understanding of those, like the nuance of that is, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
So I have, typically what I do is I work with the arts digital team. So I've developed, over the last few years, I've developed a relationship with that team. And they know that, or like we have like quite regular contact around like particularly performance and particularly visual art, because that's like, they've got somebody who writes about film, they've got somebody who writes about literature, and also I like, ultimately my day job is to make my radio show, so any writing that I do is an added bonus for me rather than, how extra work is a bonus.
Yeah.
Like it's extra work for me.
Yes.
So so it becomes this kind of like, in order for me to maintain a healthy work-life balance, theoretically, like I've largely kind of stuck to working with that team and doing the performance and the visual art stories that that I'm either really passionate about or that they've identified would be like, sometimes they come to me and they're like, we would love for you to write about this. Would you be like, do you have capacity?
Yeah.
And so that happens too.
How do you choose what story to follow? Is it audience, or is it like editorial part of the ABC, or is it your own interest and you're the audience conduit?
On AWAYE, on my radio show, I have I keep kind of the aim of the show as like my guide. So I refer to AWAYE as the home of Indigenous arts and culture on Radio National. So in order to be that, it has to be, I have to be thinking about all forms of First Nations arts, all forms of First Nations culture across the country that work in audio. And then within that, then I start thinking about like are we feeling truly national? Have we, or have I just spent a month telling stories that are based in Sydney because I am? Are we feeling a good like gender balance? Or have we just booked have we just done 3 episodes where we've had only women or only men? Have we thought about the scope of experience level within sort of the breadth of people's careers? Are we talking to early and mid-career people as much as we're talking to established career? Are we finding a really good mix of of the different art forms? I kind of mentioned that earlier, but I'm particularly conscious of the fact that this year there are, on Radio National, on the network that I'm on, there's less. We used to have a visual arts program, and we used to have a performance program, and both of those shows don't exist in 2026, and that means that there is less, there are less opportunities for people that are working in those spaces to be showcased and to find a home.
And so broaden your remit in a way to sort of capture that.
I'm trying to prioritize those stories. I've always really loved doing performance art because dance background and that kind of stuff. So I actually think there's so much more dance on AWAYE than there ever used to be.
Yeah.
Which I'm delighted by. I don't know how other people feel.
Well, do you get audience feedback and input, and do you work stories to hit a certain beat for the audience?
AWAYE's audience is incredibly quiet. I don't really hear, I don't get emails or anything like that from listeners all that often, which is fine. There are a lot of shows that I adore that I've never once sent an email to or reviewed and been like, this is so great and here's why.
Yeah.
So I'm not terribly fussed that other people aren't doing that for my little project.
Sure.
But when I am out in the world and talking to people, more and more often when I bring up that I present AWAYE, I am getting really lovely feedback from people who are listeners and know the show and really adore the stories that we tell and the people that we introduce them to or help them kind of keep up with. Because that's the other, we follow people's career. Sometimes we meet them right at the start, and then we have the opportunity to kind of be with them for years and to keep bringing them back in. I think someone like Evelyn Araloon is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't the presenter at the time, Daniel Browning was, but he spoke to Evelyn when she had won, I think it was the Nakata Brophy Award. Really, really early in her career. She might have even still been at uni. And that meant that over the subsequent years, as she won, as she published her books, as she won literary prizes, as she started to take on being an editor at Overland. Thank you so much. Yeah, like she's still very much like featured on AWAYE, and she still comes in and does interviews, and like so like that kind of the opportunity to do that with somebody is really special. And then like even I think like because the show's been on for more than 30 years, right? So like even like the Stiff Gins, a couple of years ago, they were marking their 25th year of their career. And it was around about the same time that AWAYE was marking 30 years on air. And so I went through the archives and I found the first interview that they did with us and played it to Nadia and Kalina. And
tell me about preparing that. What was that process? What does going through the archives look like?
Well, it's more and more it's digitized, so it actually just looks like sitting at my computer,
clicking around,
putting in strategic kind of keywords and seeing if the metadata is done well and it pulls up what I'm looking for, what I know must exist. So in that particular case, yeah, I went through the digital archives and was, I think it was quite straightforward and just looking for like Stiff Gins, AWAYE, and then sorting by by date and finding the earliest version that the earliest one that I could. And I'm fairly sure I was even lucky enough for it to already be digitized, which it's 3 more clicks really. But if something's not digitized, I can request for it to be.
Right.
It just means that it's sitting on a reel somewhere.
And then an archivist will go and get that reel out.
And they'll do their best to make sure that it's... Oh, because I don't know a lot about archiving. I will be real frank with you, but but the process can be I don't have a specific story of this happening, but I know that there's always a risk of damaging the original when you're putting
the digitization process.
Yeah, and because
exactly
the cleaning and then the digitizing and whatever technology that they use. So it's not exactly a fast process. So that's the other, if it's not already in the system digitized, you have to you put in your request and you tell them what your deadline is, and then you just kind of hope that it's a reasonable deadline for what you've asked.
Yeah. What is a deadline, timeline for that for you look like?
I try, and if I think I'm going to use archive, I try and put that request in or do that search 2 weeks in advance.
Okay.
Just because in my head, I'm they're going to want a day to do this. I don't know if that's reasonable or not. I don't know how busy they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my head, I'm they're going to want a day to do the thing. And then I'm going to want some time to figure out which part of because I haven't been able to audition it. So I'm going to want some time to actually listen to what has now been digitized that I've just kind of blindly requested.
Yeah.
Because it seems like I would want it. And then figure out if yes, yeah. So being okay, yeah, I do want this. Now what bit and how do I want to use it? And so I build in a bit of a buffer for things to go wrong. And also my actual production schedule is a bit strange. The first air of my show is Saturday evening. Everything is locked off on a Thursday morning.
Okay.
it goes to an engineer on Thursday morning, an audio engineer.
What does locked off mean?
As in, like, I've finished my version of
framework edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I finished my version of it, and I handed over to an audio engineer at 11 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and then they do all of the beautiful detail work that they're very skilled at. And then that afternoon, theoretically, I do one final listen and say, yeah, we're good to go. What sometimes happens is I do that listen and I say, actually, here are some notes that I would like to change. Like, you know,
For sure.
I want this bit to be louder. I want this to happen earlier. I want, you know, blah, blah, blah.
And is there like scoring and sound effects in that process, or is that already done?
There can be. So I do, if I'm doing something that has like scoring or sound effects, so I would call that an audio feature or an audio doco, like, because it is effectively a documentary piece. And so when I'm doing those kinds of things, yeah, a lot of the time I've already done sort of a rough draft version of that, but I really rely on having the audio engineers do the actual like final sound mix of like, so often my emails to them on the Thursday morning is like, I've kind of plonked the music down. I've put rough fades in. Please don't trust that that's, you know, like, please use your very skilled ears to make this work.
Yeah.
And then there's like, depending on kind of what it is that has happened, there might be some like markers that are in this mix that kind of have notes like, you know, to smooth something out or to like,
push like, the button that makes it sound good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, make this beautiful, please. I remember last year there was one particular piece that it was very much a co-production. Like, my producer, Emma Lancaster, worked really hard on a very personal story of mine, and kind of for a few reasons I sort of left it in her hands to do that and like to do a lot of that framework. And she'd done this moment, like, the person that I was interviewing, who was actually like one of my cousins, when he was telling a particular story, and you hear him have, it's quite an emotional moment, and you hear him take a breath, and then Emma had found like a sound effect of somebody breathing. She's going to be so mad that I'm revealing that this was like a thing that we created rather than. But she kind of like matched that sound effect of breath to Ron Boy's breath, so that even though he stops talking and my narration picks up, you still have that sense of like him in the story,
sitting with the weight of it.
Yeah,
and that's why the breath is there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, and I could never have had Ron Boy do that, like just breathe into a microphone, like as he has this like, as he kind of sits in this really like weighty moment. But we wanted to give people the sense of that.
Yeah.
So like she was really adamant. Like, she talked me through it and she was like, this is the how and this is the why, and it it can't move because the pacing is exact. She's like, she spent, I don't even know how long making sure of that and like finding exactly the right breaths to make it feel natural.
Amazing.
And so like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't imagine she would be upset that you revealed
she
that.
really would.
I think
She probably was like, no, Rudi, magic of radio.
It's a testament to the craft of it. It's, yeah.
But yeah, and then I think I had a similar kind of, I had sort of, I worked with somebody else's. It's quite funny. Sorry, I'm going to take myself off track.
Please.
It's really funny to think about, like the more you're like, the more connected to a story you are, kind of in some ways, the easier it is to let somebody else like bring it to life.
Yeah.
You know, so
Why?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is. I think sometimes it's just that like you do need some emotional distance in order to like tell a story that like you have some serious stake in. Like that, you know, that one that I was talking about, that was I was interviewing two of my cousins who their brother is Mark Haynes, and so he like it was right before the last week of the coronial inquest into his death, and it was, you know, so and I've always felt a little bit kind of like there's a lot of that story and a lot of that is incredibly personal to me, but I also never knew him, so I also feel like I'm encroaching sometimes.
For sure.
And I've tried, so like I had a lot of stuff to kind of navigate, but I also felt really strongly about doing that story because Lorna and Ron Boy wanted to as well, and so having someone like Emma be able to like help facilitate was really important. And then this year I was kind of on the other side of something like that. A colleague and friend of mine had donated his kidney to his brother, and he'd done some like he had recorded the like all these interviews and all these kind of points in the process along the way, and wanted to turn it into a piece, and very generously agreed to work with me on it. And
with you as the producer? Or?
Yeah. And like, I mean, don't get me wrong, he did a lot of it. He did a first draft, and then and I came to him and I was like, I love this, but I have some suggestions.
Okay.
If you're open to that. I was like, I'll take it as is.
Yeah.
Like I will, but I also think that we can get this to be even more like, and so I really like, I think I listened to that probably about 4 times before it went to air, and at least one more after it went to air, and it makes me cry every time. And I know that I did some of those same things that I had kind of that I had seen Emma do, of just like taking these like really, just like this really intensely personal story and help guide them towards like the best version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you decide in that sort of scenario how to give that feedback and how to push?
I mean, it was really useful that I was working with somebody that I know. Like I've known Sajan since probably about 8 years. So there's that.
So it better with someone you know than...
I think so. I think, well, who knows if it's actually better now that I think about it. But with Sajan, I knew that I could basically, I think, I reckon the way that I approach it is being prepared to be told no and to just have to, like, take that, you know? Because it is, like, it is theirs and they don't have to share it with me. Yeah. And so, like, so if Sajan had have told me, no, this is the way that I want to do it, I know that I would have been like, yep, fair. If I'm trying to think of another person that I've worked with in a similar kind of capacity, but like, I think by the time people bring something to you, they've thought about it and they've decided that it's for you, you know?
Or they know they need to let go of it.
Yeah, like they're often already in some kind of place to do that.
Yeah.
Which helps. And then I guess like there's I do wonder how much a factor of like the preceding reputation kind of plays into when people will or won't take your advice. Because ultimately that's what it is. Like, it's advice.
Yeah.
And I do think that like people are probably more willing to trust me now than they would have been 10 years ago, which is fair.
Yeah.
Like, I trust me more now than I...
Experience counts for a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I can see that I've my skills have developed. I can see that like my ambition has grown in like how I want things to sound and feel, and yeah.
How has your taste changed over time, and how have your skills developed to meet your taste?
I think one of the biggest changes has been that I'm more prepared to be a character in the story. Like I'm more prepared to have skin in the game and explain to you why this is, like, why I'm telling you this. Why I'm going to be the one to like do this story. I talked a really big game at the start about like I don't want to be the main, you know, like the most important voice in the room, and I don't, but I also wholeheartedly believe that like it's important to know why you're the one that's telling it.
Yeah.
And sometimes
these
days I'm more prepared to make that overt.
Yeah. And when you are a part of the story, you own it rather than shy away from it.
Yeah. And it's even on a real technical level, you can kind of you can see it in my scripting. I used to, because I started out in community radio and doing realistically, I learned to write radio scripts when I was working on a breakfast program in community radio.
Okay.
Right? So, like, because I was kind of futzing around when I was making my own show, and that's fine. But, like, the actual learning the craft of writing a radio script came through when I was doing the breakfast show. And because it was breakfast, there was kind of a golden rule of, like, you have to get into the story in no more than, it was basically like 3 to 5 sentences. 3 to 5 sentences, and then the interview needs to start. And then, like, your kind of, the outro, like the back announce that you do has to be, I think we had kind of a thing of like 1 to 3 sentences. So, like, there's this real kind of pace to a breakfast show because, you know, people are doing things in the morning and you want them to kind of be energized and keep moving. And so the stories need to feel like that too. And I carried that rule of like 3 to 5 as an introduction into an interview and kind of 1 to 3 as a back announce. I carried that into AWAYE, and that was fine. It did work. It meant that I, like, you sat with the interviews and you sat with the guest for, like, more. But I also was like, it's not a 7 a.m. program, you know?
Yeah.
6 p.m. on a Saturday night. Like, it's chill. It's like...
It's a deeper...
It's relaxed. Yeah, it's relaxed. It's a deep dive. It's kind of like... And then I think my other... Yeah, if you catch us on our second play, it's 11 p.m. at night on a Thursday. So, like, again, you don't want to be like...
Unless you do.
I mean, unless you do, but...
But then you're probably not listening to Radio National.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, these days, yeah, the introductions, like, they're a lot more lush.
Okay.
I talk to you for a lot longer.
Yeah. When you took over as the host of AWAYE, what did you do to make it yours while still honouring what it is and what it was?
I think it took me a while to actually make it mine. I think the first couple of years, because I'd started out on the program as a producer. And so I was Daniel Browning's producer, and I love being a producer, and I actually had very little aspirations of presenting a program like really seriously. And so at first I was basically backfilling him. It was going to be 2 months, and then he would be back in the presenter seat. All good. What a dream. And I was like, yeah, I can do 8 shows. That's fine. I can step in. And he was still really present. Like, because he was still with the network, and because it was a backfill, there was not a lot of, no one had really thought about, yes, I was backfilling him on air, but who was backfilling me as the producer? Nobody. So Daniel was still doing a lot of, like, that work as well. And as he learnt to present a different program,
right,
with a different kind of process, and so we were still working quite tightly together, and that meant that I was, certainly for that first year, probably for the first 3, if I'm really brutally honest, I was doing my best approximation of his style.
Right.
Because, like, it's really hard to explain, but really good producers, and I like to think that I was one and still am one. Really good producers learn the voice of their presenter, and they learn to write as that person, because that's literally what you're doing. Like, you're literally scripting the thing that they're going to say. And at some point in the process, they'll do their own edit, and they'll intervene and put their own kind of sparkle to it.
Yeah.
But the goal is to make that as easy as possible by already kind of embedding.
Yeah, and you're trying to get information from here to be in their voice, ready for the read.
Yeah. So so I've produced a lot of people, and I like to think I'm actually fairly good at capturing somebody's voice when I need to. So
tell me how. What is your process for learning and capturing someone's voice?
I mean, the first step is that you've got to listen to them, you spend an inordinate amount of time listening to how they talk, what they're interested in, what is their connection to a particular guest or story, because those are the kind of nuggets. This is a trick that I recently learned, and I kind of love. If you're new to writing for somebody and you haven't had if you're new to writing for somebody, one of the easiest things to do is do a little 10-minute interview with them about not something that's going to go anywhere, just kind of voice notes app, pop it on and be how do you know Travis DeVries? What's your how did you guys meet? What's your favorite thing about him? What do you love about his work? And then just spend 10 minutes kind of capturing that. And then
is that pulling their turn of phrases and their vernacular into your modality for writing?
Yeah. And so then you can literally you can sit there and play it back on, later while they're off doing their stuff. You play it back to yourself and you're just and now you write all of that information in first person as a script. I first met Travis DeVries when I was 19, and blah blah blah. I've always really admired and then it just sort of
that level of observing a person.
I'll be real with you, I've never done that.
Okay.
Someone did that to me.
Right. Okay. That level of being observed, was that a eye-opening kind of process for you?
I was hot damn. I could have done this all this time. That's such an incredible powerful way of just kind of cutting to the core of what this, and because for me what that did was I got to sort of info dump for 10 minutes or actually for this particular process it was that that family story that I was telling you about. So Emma interviewed me for I think about 30 minutes, maybe longer, because she was doing that sort of structure and it relied so heavily on me as an individual. So she needed to capture my thoughts and feelings about things in order to put together a first version. And then that meant that I didn't spend 3 days kind of agonizing over how to say the thing she'd kind of effectively like put together, like interspersed like the transcript of what I had said, and so it was genuinely me and my thoughts and my feelings about this story. And yeah, but like it doesn't have to be a high stakes thing. It can be something as simple as like, I'm going to interview, I'm going to interview somebody and I don't really understand like your feelings about that person. So like, let me quickly talk to you for 10 minutes. And
how do you approach being a host differently to being a producer? And what was that sort of growth and change like?
Yeah. I think like I was saying, I'm more conscious of like who I am in the story, and like I guess like as a conduit for the audience. Oh, do I think I'm a conduit? I've always been taught to think about radio as like we're at a dinner party, and it is there are people having a conversation, and then there is one other person who is your audience. Like there's one other person who is listening intently, and they're part of this, right? Like they're a silent observer, but they are very much a part of it. So like then it's not necessarily that I'm the audience. The audience is not me, which I think particularly works for a show like AWAYE because...
So you're not the audience surrogate, but you are going and talking with the knowledge that there is an audience there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the scripting part of the process is talking to that person and being like, you might remember, hey, did you, if you want to do this. So like it's all that kind of second person, like present tense, real casual, colloquial kind of stuff.
Yeah. When you're thinking about First Nations art and culture for like radio and stories, how are you finding an angle, or how are you deciding what is an angle to take to find the way into the story? And is there a moment where you're going, this is a big thing that we can get into in this way, or you're not doing gotcha journalism or anything like that, but is there this like light bulb moment of, this is the pitch?
Because I would work on a pre-recorded show, I have often the luxury of figuring it out after I've done the edit. So like I've done my recording, the audio is edited, and then I can figure out, like what is the hook? Because I think, because you've also at that point, you've figured it out, like the first thing that they're going to hear, like what you're throwing to, right? Like it's...
So you don't have a like editorial meeting and going, here's the subject and here's our thing. It's not that sort of classic newsroom.
We probably should, but we don't. It's because AWAYE is a two-person team and has been for a really long time. Editorial meetings Also, honestly, like I sit next to my producer, and like that's kind of always been the case. I've had a lot of different producers, but I've always basically had them like right next to me. So the pitch process or the editorial conversation is literally just like if and when something comes up, turning to them and being like, hey,
Should we cover this?
yeah,
Or how we
what do
would?
you reckon?
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes it can be a little bit fraught because like when it is such a small team, it relies really heavily on like knowing, I don't know, like understanding that it can't be driven by our individual taste. You know, like
Does some of it have to be, but you also have to know that it needs to be bigger than that?
yeah, I guess it's just that thing of like I'm not gonna love everything that I cover. Like in a practical sense, that would be impossible. Luckily, I genuinely do love First Nations like arts and culture, and I am excited by the work that's being made. But like, I'm not always gonna. But yeah, like there are absolutely things that I have featured on the show where I've been like ambivalent to like it not being to my taste, and then just kind of being like, that's okay, not things don't have to be for me.
Yeah.
But so like, and that's where that kind of thing of making sure that we're like covering like looking for the value in the story, and who would want to know, like figuring out how to say this without sounding like a dick. But I guess just like remembering that when I said I'm not my audience, there are a lot of really like quite literal sense of, sorry, that is in a very literal sense. Radio National's audience, generally speaking, is significantly older than me. They're like they're in a different economic bracket than me.
Okay.
They're in a different like just like there are all these kind of functions, and I know that that's a substantial part of my audience, but I also know that there are so there's this kind of there's who I know is listening and who I want to be listening. And so like that makes I don't know if this is answering your question at all, but like it's a thing that I'm kind of often sort of like thinking about, like is this something that like is it something that my actual audience should hear about or like wants to hear about? Is it something that I'm going to put into the show for the audience that I'm hoping is there? And like, yeah, because they're very different people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The stories that you tell in AWAYE, education, entertainment, or legacy?
All of the above.
Okay.
At different points. Like not necessarily every story is going to hit all three, but I definitely do all of them. So like and if I can try and have like something that hits two of those at once, that's pretty great. I remember doing I did this episode about the song From Little Things Big Things Grow, written by Paul Kelly and Kev Carmody, and I had the opportunity to interview Kev. I went to Queensland for it, and went to his mate's music studio, and we did the interview
Which
there.
studio? Do you remember which studio?
Oh, I should know this, but it's in
Stanthorpe, outside of Stanthorpe?
Yeah.
Rod Wilmot?
Yeah. I flew into Brisbane on the first flight of the day, and hired a car and drove 3 hours to get there.
This is where I grew up.
True.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I went along and I did this I spent almost half a day with the two of them and had an absolute had such a blast. And then when I was putting that story together, it was a co-production with another Radio National program. So they did a version of it where they looked really deeply at the music element of this story. So they unpacked kind of the legacy of that song and the way that it's been covered over the years. And and I was like, that's great, but I'm really fascinated by the cultural legacy that the story has come from and continues to have.
Yeah.
So for my version of it, it had to my producer Mia Hull and I went to a lot of effort to find information about when when they went on strike at Wave Hill, how much they were being paid at the time and what that converted to in contemporary currency of 2023, and and so we did this whole kind of we broadened it out because we were yes, the song is great, but it is also it's a piece of storytelling, and I felt when people now listen to the song, they've kind of lost the thread of where it came from.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of put that back into the conversation for my version of that.
Cool.
So yeah, that was this moment of entertainment and education and what was the third one you did?
Legacy.
I mean, yeah, look, that was a classic, hitting all those three, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had a story that you got to a point but didn't put to air or cut it off?
Normally by the time it's recorded, it's almost certainly going to air, but I have pulled stories that have even gotten beyond that point, and it's and it has always been down to something really it's basically been what is the phrase I use? I always talk to people about this is when I intend to air the story unless there is breaking black arts news.
Sure.
And to some degree that's a joke because there is very, very little that actually counts in that form.
Sure.
There's very little in sort of arts reporting that can't wait an extra week. But occasionally I have had actual sincere breaking news, and
Yeah.
I've had to bump something, and then in bumping it, it became irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Like the performance was past,
Yeah.
or the you know, and like it's so rare, and I actually can't think of an example right now, but like that's basically, by the time I've recorded, it's almost always gonna air.
When you've written for comedy, how are you approaching that differently for when you're writing for AWAYE?
I was on a steep learning curve. So I was asked to be one of the writers of Always Was for ABC's Jan 26 offering, and I it made me incredibly aware of the fact that like I'm not that funny.
What made you aware of that?
Like I really struggled with the process of like writing jokes for that show.
Yeah.
A lot of the jokes that the ones that I wrote that like the ones I wrote that definitely made it on were mostly the ticker kind of. So you know, there's like the thing at the bottom of the screen. There's like the little. I wrote a decent amount of those.
Who else was in the writers' room with you?
So because I came in just sort of in the 2 weeks right before we filmed and went to air. So there had already been a writers' room that had happened at the end of 2025, and that was James Coley as head writer. He's non-Indigenous, but also Yaraman Thorne, Megan Wilding, I think Elaine Crombie did a little bit of writing for the show. Megan and Elaine were not part of the writers' room by the time I had joined. Like, so when I went in, it was James, Yaz, Dave Woodhead, myself, and somewhat unofficially Sophia Mackenzie.
Okay.
She had just started with ABC Indigenous and
was getting a sort of a show around the block kind of
thing.
Yeah.
And so every time we went in to do like writers' room stuff, I'd turn around to Soph and be like, "You coming?"
Cool. Yeah.
And so she'd come in with us.
Yeah.
And I think that was really nice because it like there was a real blokey energy to that room.
Okay.
Like James, Yaz, Dave would talk about films that I've not seen, or they'd talk about like sport shit that I don't care about, and it was really nice to have someone like Sophia who was kind of like, no, I'm not into this either. And I mean, like that's like the guys were really welcoming and they were really supportive. It just was that thing of like their interests are not necessarily my interests.
Yeah, it's a different energy.
Yeah. But yeah, so like writing. I think a lot of what I was ultimately the contribution that I feel like I made was largely around like sub editing effectively. I was kind of like there were a couple of things where like I was reading it and I was just like, oh, that's not how a person talks, and so I like would suggest it's effectively the same joke. It's just like very slightly, you know, like the syntax has changed or like there's a different word in there or whatever, and then you know that was. But yeah, so I kind of, and then there was a couple of times where I was like, I'd kind of like throw an idea into the room of like something like this, but I don't quite know how to get there. And then, you know, like someone like Yaz would kind of like unpack the idea with me and kind of walk me through it, and it'd get to a point that like worked, but I also felt like if he wasn't there, it would never have been on a page.
Yeah. Were you doing like setup or punchline and working backwards, or?
Look, sometimes it's just half baked.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like what if
there's something here?
there's something here.
Yeah.
One of my it didn't go anywhere, I'm pretty sure, but I was having a lot of fun with the idea of like, because what you need to just like, ultimately it was a comedy show, but it was also a news show, so everything was fact checked.
Okay.
Like these were like these were jokes that stood up to scrutiny on a factual level.
Sure.
Which is a weird thing to do. But like I went down this weird rabbit hole for more time than I should have, about like the idea of you know, Migaloo the whale.
Yeah.
Migaloo reaching elder status.
Okay.
Because he is going to turn 40 either this year or next year.
Yeah.
And so so I was trying to figure out a way to make that kind of work, and in doing that I needed to like make sure that Migaloo still is around.
Okay.
And I also and then I was right about the age thing, and then also how old do whales actually like live? How long do they live?
Yeah.
And so is 40 like a reasonable time to
This sounds like normal writer's room behavior.
So I just had it, like, and it went nowhere.
Yeah.
But like I was really pleased by it. But I also because I wanted it to kind of like the kind of follow on was to have Uncle Migaloo then be announced as like a board member for an Aboriginal organisation.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, it just went nowhere. But like that was the kind of stuff I was doing.
With the like learning Tone's voice versus like learning a host's voice for an arts show, what would be when you're in a writer's room and it's speedy and quick like that, whereas you're honouring and taking the time?
Yeah, I mean, there's also it's also the thing of like you have more people writing for this one host, so like you're kind of grappling with that too, and I think that definitely made it harder because like I mean like that it was also it's that thing of like a lot of what he is kind of like his interests and his kind of like his energy is like much more aligned with the guys in the room than it was with me. And so like again, not that he was anything other than lovely, but I found him like really difficult to write for.
Okay.
Just because I couldn't quite
bridge the gap into
and so like it was, and I I was also at the time like I was doing I was in that room like doing some of that work while also still making an episode of AWAYE and interviewing to find a new producer for my program.
Yeah, okay.
So it was very hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have the luxury to kind of like sort of pour my energy into it the way that I would like to have. And I'm hoping I have kind of let them know that if there's an opportunity like that again next year, that I very much would like to, and I would approach it like differently. I would make sure that I don't have 5 other things on my plate, and I would just focus on this one opportunity and kind of spend the time learning more. And I've also I've had that one time now.
You've gotten a taste for it?
Yeah. Like enough of a taste. But I do still I do still think that like writing comedy is a real challenge, and I kind of half think that I am someone who does funny things. I'm not someone who is funny.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you agree or not, but like
I try not to editorialize.
No, man, like but like, you know, those people where you're just like, that person is hilarious.
But they're
I
not
don't
funny.
think they know
Yes.
that, like, I don't think that was on purpose.
They're not landing punchlines. They are just funny to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just live a ludicrous life.
Yeah.
And they make bold, wild choices. And so, yeah.
And that's you think that's where you are. More of a like, they should capture that energy as a human experiment rather than as a, you can craft a joke.
Possibly. Yeah, I think I also think like the more
it sounds like you're
the more out of
hosting next year.
Move over, Tony Armstrong.
Yeah.
This is my gig. I think also like comedy, like actually writing comedy, I think requires a level of vulnerability that I'm not always prepared to have or like give. You know, like you've got to...
In what way?
Like you're really exposing like what makes you tick, right? Like, and I think I'm very good at kind of like, I'm very good at walls, and I'm very good at like intellectualizing things. And I think part of, aside from the fact that I was juggling a lot of different things at like over those kind of 2 weeks, I also was feeling out of my depth, and one of the ways that I kind of like mitigate that feeling is to just kind of like sit back and observe and put myself in the position of I'm learning. And that's fine, but that doesn't get things on the page, does it? You know?
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's a very like, I'm learning. Oh, I'm gonna observe, but
and I'm gonna sort of half like put forward a half-baked idea, but like, but it's fine if it doesn't work because I didn't put my whole self into this.
Yeah, and the writer's room really is often about going, I'm going to put down 30 ideas, and hey, is any of these landing?
Right? Like, like there's a lot of bravery and a lot of vulnerability in doing that, and I reckon I wasn't ready to, you know. Some of those ticker the ticker gags that I wrote, like, I wasn't actually like, I hadn't been invited to be a writer at that point, but like being on staff and being kind of given a heads up that it was coming and that was going to be an element of the show. And so there was just kind of this general statement of like, So if you've got any idea, like if you think of anything, just like send them, like email, like send them through. And I took that at face value and I sent through like 6. But it did mean that when a spot opened up and a chair opened up, I got invited in. And then I was like, oh no, there's real stakes to this now. And then I did like hardly
The
any.
pressure of the real stakes kind of ruins you.
I think so.
Yeah.
Which like...
I very much have been in that space before.
Yeah. I don't think I've really like acknowledged that until today.
Okay.
But anyway.
Thank you. When looking at First Nations work in an international context, how do you cover things differently than within a national context or a local context?
So it's quite rare that I have the opportunity to cover things that are in an international context, but I did have, how do I explain it? I think that the few times that I've had the chance to cover something that was First Nations art on a global stage, the stakes have been quite high. There's a lot more attention. Like there was, I was invited. No, I wasn't even invited. Sorry. I was offered the opportunity to travel to Venice for the Biennale when Archie Moore was presenting at the Australia Pavilion in 2024. I had I'd been to every single media preview or media announcement that had happened from the day that he was announced as the artist that would be going through to like basically I think 1 or 2 weeks before he got on the plane to go to Venice himself and start installing the work. And at that stage, he was one of only a very small number of First Nations artists that had been part of a Venice Biennale, and he was only the second ever to be a solo artist, solo First Nations artist. And the previous one had been Tracy Moffat, who, I think she'd gone maybe like 4 years before. But yeah, so like Archie was like, it was a really big deal. And at that point, because of like because I'd been kind of following the story, and I'm one of a very small number of First Nations arts reporters in the country, but also very specifically at the ABC. Like this rare golden opportunity came up, and I was really excited, and so I went. I was so pleased to be able to go, but then I was about to get on the plane and the reality hit that like I'm going to have to actually like make enough stories and the kinds of stories that justify the like sending me all the way to Italy. And I was spending a week in Venice, and then I decided to stay on for a holiday after, which like...
what was the scale of story you needed to tell?
So I knew that the plan for what I would be doing was that I would write a profile of him. At this stage also, just like, I don't know whether people truly understand, but on a practical level, everything about the artwork is secret. Like, there's no embargoed, like, shared information. There's no, like, you don't get to see it
So
until...
you're going sight unseen. You have no briefing on it. You just...
I knew the name of it.
Okay.
I knew, and like, I'd had a I'd interviewed him, like, right before he got on a couple of weeks before he got on the plane. And during that interview, what I learned is the name is Kith and Kin. So it is presumably about, like, country and family.
Yeah.
That he had been looking through the archives of various places doing his own family history.
Mm-hmm.
Again, kind of thematically connected to the name. And that... Oh, and that he had told me that, like, the way that they were using light in the Australia Pavilion was really specific. And I was, in my head, I'm like, cool, what does that... I don't know what that means.
No,
so
that's...
Yeah. So that's what I know going in.
Right.
Like, that's what I know getting on a plane to go to the other side of the world, to write a profile, to do a radio piece that will come out significantly after the fact, because at this stage my audience has already heard about this work like quite recently, and I think, like, one time where I would I think the Radio National's breakfast show would call me, and I would be like, I'm here on the grounds. This is the vibe.
Cool.
So, like, those were my responsibilities, those three things. And then, yeah, I get, oh, and there was, like, a vague plan to do a piece that was very ambitious, that I didn't fully understand, because it was using some new design software in order to, like, see and experience the artwork in detail. But we hadn't really, I think what I had been shown was, like, something from the New York Times that was, like, similar to what we would do, but not actually, like, at this point, like, I don't know what the artwork looks like, so I don't know how that's going to translate into this thing. But, like, I'll kind of, that'll be a piece that is worked on by me, by Daniel Browning, who is also traveling to Venice with me, and by Teresa Tan, who's a photographer and designer, and she would be working from Sydney. And so, yeah, so actually 4 pieces that I was going to be,
Before you kind of dive into the outcome of that, or in the process of that, what was your research process then, going in not knowing a lot?
So I learned as much as I could about Archie and his creative practice. And then, like, that's kind of, I guess I also, in the meantime, had been spending a lot of energy making programs of AWAYE that would run while I was overseas and not available. So, in my head I was like, oh, I've got like a 14-hour plane ride. I'll somewhere along the way, I'll kind of I'll start writing. And this, I didn't, by the way. I watched movies and fell asleep, as I should. That was the best way to do it.
You don't have to tell me that.
No, so I didn't start writing until I actually like was in Venice and I saw the work. But like I remember walking into the Australia Pavilion and seeing this like immense installation, and it was breathtaking and it was beautiful. And then
take me through walking in.
So
what was the weather like?
Look, it was a really sunny day. It was summer in Venice, and the media preview time, or like the kind of days where media is able to go and do like preview works, means that the park is sort of relatively quiet. And so it's a lovely kind of summer sunny day, and I had kind of gotten lost in the parklands for a little bit, but I eventually found my way onto the right path, and I walk up to this massive building that is the Australia Pavilion, and I step through the doors, and there is like, it's quite like it's quite dimly lit, so it takes a minute for you to really like for your eyes to kind of adjust to the darkness of this space, because all four walls and the ceiling are painted black with blackboard paint. And once you start to look at the walls properly, you realise that the white markings on the walls are actually, it's chalk, and it's handwritten. It's a handwritten family tree in chalk, and it stretches from, I would say, about kind of chest height. So everything, like, it doesn't go all the way to the floor. It's from kind of chest height, which is like an easy point for you to read from. And then, so it starts there and it just sort of like stretches up. And the further up your eyes track, the more kind of densely packed the writing is, until eventually you're looking at the ceiling and it's incredibly densely packed, and it's kind of the word that a lot of people kind of keep coming back to is this like tessellation. And so like so that's, but then like the kind of the other thing that is that you also like recognize within the room is this like table of documents. So there's a massive white table in the center of the room, and on top of it are these documents, and it turns out that there's about 500 and something documents, and they're all coronial reports relating to Aboriginal deaths in custody, redacted to protect the privacy of the people referred to. There's also a handful of documents that are on that table that they refer directly to Archie Moore's own family, and the kind of surveillance that they were under in those like mission era days. But what I guess like the thing is, like, as much as you want to get close to the table and to read like and look at this information, you actually can't, because on the floor around it there's water, and the water sits really flush to the floor. So actually, like, between sort of the low lighting and the black walls and the black floor, actually, this like very shallow pool of water it just looks like glossy floor for a moment unless you make the mistake of stepping into it, which they've got invigilators in the room, and they work really hard to make sure that you don't walk into the art and that you don't lean against the walls and like rub off the chalk, which God love them for. I because I was there in that first week, I watched them learn the
tells,
things that like you wouldn't think you were gonna have to tell people not to.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to lean against the wall, not to don't touch it, etc. Like, so I watched them learn the practicalities of this artwork. That like when the doors open on a really windy day, that like it'll blow like dust and dirt in that will then sit on the top of the water, you know, and so like how does that get cleaned to make sure that that's not part of it. I know that the documents were hand stitched together to ensure that like they could kind of ruffle if the door opens, but they can't blow away.
Interesting.
So like there's all these kind of like nuances to the room. And so, one other element is that there is this kind of like there's a bench, and the bench is sort of just back from the table. So it's kind of, the room is designed for you to experience the family tree and to experience these documents that are so clearly exist but are just out of reach, and you can't read them and you can't touch them, but you know that they're there, and there is a curiosity to them. Yeah, so there's a curiosity, but like, and like from a Black perspective, kind of this frustration of like just give me the information that I know exists.
Okay.
And then like, yeah, so it's all kind of designed to be this sort of experience of like a monument, but also like a place of grief, and a place to contemplate. And it's, I think for that reason, there's like quite specific rules around like how many people they let in at a time, because they don't want it to become kind of congested and a spectacle.
Yeah.
It's for contemplation. So yeah, I spent my time writing, doing some interviews with Archie and his curator Ellie Buttrose, to, now that I've seen it, to kind of talk to them about like what has been made and the thinking that went into it, and the practicalities as well.
And how much are you interrogating the artist's intent versus making your own art theory reads on the work?
For something like that, I'm largely going with his intent, and sharing that. Part of it is because I am not, visual art is not like one of my sort of areas of expertise, and I've really learnt on the job. So like, I think to some degree I take visual artists at face value. Like, yeah.
And do you feel like a remit to go more into artist intent than to go into what your read of it is?
I think I mean, like, I would love to be able to to sincerely talk technique and execution with artists, and in the mediums that I feel comfortable doing that, I do. But I think at this stage I'm probably, I don't really do that with visual artists because I'm very much learning. So I can I will have conversations with someone and they'll say a thing about like, you can see that like, you know, from this painting to this from this painting early in my career to this painting later in my career, that like I've grown in confidence because like the brush is more loaded, and I'm like, that's great. I couldn't see that, but I'm delighted that you can. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for Kith and Kin, I very much I think what I tried to, the places where I was able to kind of like dig a little bit deeper was more in the scope of like the like the cultural kind of underpinnings of what he had been doing, whether it was through like family research and accessing archive, or like the way that kind of like contradiction that can exist between like what's recorded versus the truth. And because like we know that sometimes the documents lie, sometimes the people lie. And like, where do we find the truth when we are kind of constantly navigating or like bouncing between those two things?
Yep. Yeah.
So, you know, yeah.
And in your work, are you trying to present truth, or are you acknowledging that there are bias?
Oh, there's definitely bias. Yeah. And I'm not afraid to kind of let that show.
On your own bias as well? And
yeah. I think it's unrealistic and kind of unreasonable, particularly. So like making an art and culture show, like that's, I think people understand and are willing to accept that that's ultimately subjective, and like subjectivity is going to come into that. And that's like, yes, I agree. I actually would take it a step further and say that objectivity is not actually possible in any form of media.
Yeah.
And what people think is objective is actually something that maintains the status quo.
Yeah. Is there a piece of media you've come across that comes close
to being objective?
Yeah. Or is it not something you're not really looking for generally?
I'm just not convinced that it's possible, right? Because like,
or should be.
Yeah, like I think we are better off admitting and accepting that like the like journalism, media as a sector, as a form, was built on kind of the structures of like, it was built by and for like cis-het white men, like middle class, and that the stories or the reporting that you see that feels objective often is just maintaining that. And the stories that you see and feel like are unobjective or subjective are the ones that are challenging that status quo. And there's nothing, to me, There's nothing inherently wrong with challenging that status quo. I think the disingenuous thing is to not recognize that your objectivity doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's the thing that frustrates me. It's that whole, there's a phrase that everybody throws around in newsrooms of like, leave yourself at the door.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, fuck you.
Okay.
The door was built for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to leave anything at the door when you walk through it, right? Like, you want me to leave a part of, like, no, broaden the door.
Yes. The identity and experience of you is the strength that is a part of the strength that you bring, and the reason you should be in that newsroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you open the door, you get I can bring you a richer story. Or like, you know.
Yes.
Someone can bring a richer story. But if you insist on leaving that door exactly as is, then we don't get to do anything different. We don't get to, like, we keep doing the same thing and then wondering why it doesn't work. Like.
Back to Kith and Kin.
God.
What was the process of working with Teresa Tan as a photographer and digital designer who stayed in Sydney while you were on the ground in Venice?
So, because we were in very different time zones, we would have these, like, we would often kind of connect first thing in the morning for me, sort of quite late in the evening for her, and then vice versa. So the first priority was for me to get my my profile written and done. So, like, at first, that's all I was doing.
You sort of one-tracked mind with that stuff?
It just had an earlier deadline, so it needed to be done, and then once it was, I could then kind of shift my focus, and that also, I think, gave Teresa the luxury of being able to, like, see the work now in these, like, high-res images, and they were like...
Who took those images?
A photographer in Italy, because it was... I don't know the technology, but, like, they were really, really high resolution.
Yeah. And were they directed by Teresa or...
Yeah,
you?
I think, no, very much her. So she kind of asked for specific photos, including a photo of Archie in the space. And she gave, I remember her giving, like, this little kind of mock-up of what she wanted.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, she had a picture of one of the walls, and then she sort of hand drew the pose that she wanted Archie in, and, like, sort of stuck it on top exactly where she wanted him to be, and was like, can you get me this?
Okay.
And so the photographer in Italy had to kind of do that.
Were they an Italian photographer or an ABC
sure.
Australian?
No, it was an Italian photographer. Yeah, so he had to go and, like, recreate, and it was quite funny. And so then we started out just kind of, Teresa and I would have, like, conversations about, like, what were the elements that I wanted to highlight, what was the structure, and because she was having to build it into this kind of, like,
new digital system.
Yeah. And as she was doing that, I would do the words, and then also, like, because it was a co-written piece, so my co-writer Daniel was being kind of allocated specific elements to write about as well. And then we just kind of it was quite a complicated process. And what would happen is that I would eventually, like, sometimes I'd go online the next morning and things had shifted or changed in ways that I couldn't understand because
What do you mean?
it was being driven by
Shifted? What was shifted?
like an element of the artwork that like I had in my head. This is like, we need to go from this element of the work to that next bit, you know. So like it'd be like
Like in the platform.
yeah. And I couldn't quite understand why certain things were being moved or changed or getting pushed back. And ultimately, I had to have like you know, me, Teresa, and the editors had a chat, and we realized that one of the problems is that because I can't see, because I don't understand kind of the structure of their design framework. So some of that is what's dictating it. And also, I actually, I was being edited, but not in a way where I could actually like explain why I kept putting certain things in.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to speak directly to the editors.
Okay.
So rather than, because Teresa was acting somewhat as a go-between because she was on the ground in the same time zone as the editors.
Yeah.
So she was working with them and I was working
So you
separately.
weren't able to like articulate to the editor directly what your like
being like,
your words needed, and yeah,
or being like, I need to say this here because, or like, sometimes it wasn't even I need to say it here. It was like I need it to be said at some point. So if you're going to, you know, I'm fine for you to move it, but I need you to not cut it. So we finally, like, we had a really productive meeting where we kind of said, okay, going to put this into a Word document, and you're going to like track changes and put through like your edits, and I'm going to have the capacity to like say yes or no or add a comment about why. And like, so we finally kind of got there. And then the next step was like, well, the next step for me, I don't know if this is actually the order things worked in, was then kind of going through what it looked like on a practical, real level when the images were involved. And Teresa had a lot of design considerations around like the way that we move through the artwork in that article. I call it an article because it kind of it tracks into detail on the piece, like on the artwork, and then it sort of zooms out and it takes you to a different spot and it zooms in again, and you have to be really conscious of the way that that's moving because you don't want it to go too fast, you don't want it to basically you don't want to make people seasick.
Yeah.
And there's like accessibility elements to it, and then we had a lot of thoughtful conversations around whether to, because Archie had included slurs in the artwork, and so there was a conversation about
like cultural slurs.
Yeah, because he was writing the names of people that he found in his research, and sometimes they are documented using slurs. And so
or their names are
derogatory,
yeah,
or they're diminutives And in fact, and so, these are people who are being infantilized, and and so that became kind of a conversation about what sort of, where is the line in whether that's included in my writing? What do we show? How do we make it clear that this is an element of the work, but it is not included in a way that encourages or invites you to start using this language? Which all of that was kind of considered and had to be worked through. So we would have these moments of and then even just this idea of do we, when I'm referring to, for instance, there was if I'm referring to a specific name on the wall, when we show it in the visual element, do we do anything to kind of heighten or brighten that name to draw your eye to it, or do we leave it
flat
as is?
Yeah.
And then it's your responsibility to look for it and have the experience of finding it, which is what we decided to do. But all of these kind of considerations went into the marrying the words with the design and finding the way to tell it.
Yeah. And how did you explain to Teresa, who couldn't be on the ground but was getting these really high resolution imagery to work with, how did you sort of convey the physical sense of being in the room to the design team to be able to realize that?
I think that ultimately came through in the the writing that I gave them. That kind of, we actually started with this idea of when you first step into the Australia Pavilion, this is the experience. And that became genuinely the start of this piece. And so we found that was, I think that was the way that the best way for Teresa, for Matt, for Chris to kind of understand what was trying to be captured in this piece, and then to kind of move forward from there. I mean, I also did have quite a lot of, I had a lot of phone calls with T while I was in Italy, and just kind of I don't know, monologuing at her about how much I liked the work and what I was up to.
For sure.
So there's that too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The final sort of realization of that piece was there input from the artist and curator before it was shown publicly?
Not before. It's really, really rare for ABC staff to give somebody sort of an opportunity to review something before it's published. It has to be pretty special circumstances, and in terms of sensitivities.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that should be.
No,
I'm curious because it is such a big piece of work that you guys did.
Yeah, so not with that one. I know that we were emailed after it was published. We were emailed to correct something. was something quite minor. It was just sort of it might have even just been in a caption. It wasn't like the text.
Yeah.
But so like we made a minor correction, but otherwise what I did we decided that we were going to enter it into the Walkley Foundation's Mid-Year Media Prize. And when we were doing that, I reached out to Ellie, who curated Kith and Kin, and I asked her if she would be willing to send me a statement of support for the work, and she very generously did, and talked about like the way that we had captured Archie's intent and had really kind of honoured his work.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the channel. Staunch is a podcast from Awesome Black, hosted by Travis DeVries and produced by Tristan Field, with production coordination by Jack Hickey, audio and video editing by Ripple Narratives. Episodes of Staunch are recorded with our partners DM Podcasts and MIK Studios on Gadigal Country, and at the Awesome Black Studio on Wanneroo Lands.